I'm one of your local TDs in the Dublin 15 constituency and also Government Chief Whip and Minister for Sport and the Gaeltacht, and been asked to speak about sport, and maybe I'll set out some of the areas that I'm responsible for, and then maybe do a Q&A on politics and participation in politics. Obviously you've got issues around news, advocacy and charity in the context of this, and I want to commend the two previous speakers who covered two different areas, one on energy and the environment, the other on disability, and it's certainly both merit ongoing focus from a government perspective. So it's great to see young people interested in participation in terms of the civic environment and the world around us, and we always encourage, from a political perspective, young people's voices are really important in the decisions we make and how we shape what we do on a daily basis. So commend you all for your interest, and your input is valued by me as a local TD and as a minister. So just to say, obviously as Minister for Sport, many of you will be involved in different clubs and different sporting endeavours locally. We've really tried to drive participation in sport. We have a 60% participation rate as our focus by 2027. At the moment, post-COVID, that's dropped to about 44% from a 46% pre-COVID. It dropped even greater than that in the periods prior to it. And how do we achieve greater participation rates? How do we get more people of all ages, abilities, backgrounds, generations involved in being active in their daily lives? So we're funding, you look at the pitch next door that you have here, and and all the range of facilities in Dublin 15. We had a record level of investment of over 160 million in facilities across the country, so that we partner as a government with clubs, with sporting organisations and grassroots on how they can build better facilities. One of the big changes in the last 20 years has been the huge growth amongst women and girls in participation in sport, massively increasing across a whole range of sports, and that's a key priority for me as Minister for Sport, is how we can keep building on that, where we have a huge amount, much more interest, much better levels of participation, but there's also concerns around attrition. So at particular points, particularly in secondary school, where people drop off, stop being active, stop being involved in a local club, and trying to bridge that and help people continue in a club and continue to be active is something we're really trying to focus on. And facilities is one element of that. Another element is targeted support, where we know that participation rates are lower. So for example, the previous speaker spoke about accessibility for people with disabilities and inclusion across a lot of walks of life. And participation levels for people with disabilities is far lower than your average population participation rate. So we have a new Sport for All fund, which is allowing clubs. I was actually in Bridget's in the last couple of weeks. They have a new GAA for All group, which is helping, giving additional opportunities for people with disabilities to participate in GAA. For example, we've got Football for All in Castleknock Celtic. We've got a huge amount of sports now opting in and offering sporting endeavours to people with disabilities, and we're trying to partner with sporting organisations and clubs to actually be able to participate and be more inclusive in offering additional initiatives to people in our community. We're also focused on disadvantaged areas. They have a lower participation rate in sport, and trying to give them extra support, and also minority groups in our community who are less likely to participate. So driving up and building a more active society, which gives people a chance to, it could be basic activities like walking, running, cycling, or it could be formal activity in terms of playing with a particular team or an individual pursuit, and we're trying to do that. Just out of interest, as a show of hands, who here played sport in primary school? And as a show of hands, who's currently involved in sport? So you still have a good level, good participation, and that's very positive to see, because in a lot of schools there's a serious drop-off in secondary school, and we had and the reason I'm speaking to you as part of this, and I commend the school on doing this, is that we had a youth forum on sport, where we had young people across the island of Ireland in a very structured discussion on questions like, why is there a drop off in participation in sport? What are the impediments to people participating and continuing in sport? And there was a lot of interesting insights from students, which we'll be publishing that report in the coming weeks. Issues like the amount of formal allocation of time that you're given in your week, that there isn't that same level of structured activity compared to other countries at primary and secondary level, and that's something that I think the Department of Education could consider. There's also students raised issues with us around uniform policy, was something that we got a lot of feedback on, that they feel that's an impediment and a barrier for younger people participating in the school environment. We had feedback on at a club level that there isn't that extra level of support where people are more likely to leave sports or formal activities. So there's a whole range of feedback that we received there. We've compiled that report and we'll put it into the public domain in the coming weeks. We can send it on to yourselves if you've an interest in seeing it and getting your perspective on it as well. Just to say, we also have a new winter initiative on sport where we're trying to really, again, during this period, through the winter and into early next year, people are tending to be more sedentary. They drop off their level of activity as the evenings get colder and darker, and for a percentage of the population, that behaviour persists, and they become less active, and that persistent behaviour turns into years. Then they're less active. So we have a new winter initiative on sport with nearly 1,000 activities, over 800 at the moment. We're continuing to build on them, that give our opportunities for participation in sport through the winter period for people to try a new activity, try a new sport, try an individual activity or a group activity, but just trying to encourage people to be active in the winter period. We also have a new energy scheme. As people know, the cost of energy is escalating beyond what people would have expected a year ago. So we have a new €35 million fund to support clubs and sporting organisations around the country we want people to be more sustainable in their energy use, but we also want to make sure that clubs keep the lights on for the winter period and allow people to participate in sport, and we want to help and partner with clubs through the winter period. So that's just something from a sporting context. And just say, people will be aware of the National Sports Campus. We're putting significant investment into that. We've a planning permission sought for a new velodrome, which is a big indoor cycling arena. We're trying to really develop the National Sports Campus in Abbottstown. Some of you may be in the aquatic centre there as the home of Irish sport, and ensure that it's expanded and we have a lot more opportunities, and better connectivity with the local community is something we're trying to build, and we have a new master plan on that being launched in the coming weeks. Just to say on the issues around sport, or maybe my own background, and I also have the Gaeltacht brief. So I grew up here in Dublin 15. I was in school locally, then studied law and politics, and then switched to become a doctor, and ran for election as I was studying for that, and was a councillor initially and then a TD. So that's my own background. I'm also Minister for the Gaeltacht, so responsibility for the Irish language across the country, and supporting Gaeltacht communities so that they continue to have strong language growth and language retention, but also trying to help different Irish language communities which are right across the country. We've got many people in Dublin 15 who speak Irish on a daily basis in their household, and supporting them is something we're keen to do, but also to make Irish a more attractive option for students, and we're working with the Department of Education on strengthening that. There'll be a huge amount of opportunities for the language. So I brought in a new Irish Language Act. People may have heard more Irish language ads on the radio or seen them on TV. So there's a rule now at all public service ads, 20% of ads have to be through the Irish language. There'll be a rule is being introduced. There's a law. The law also states that 20% of new recruits to the public service will have to be proficient in the Irish language. So to really give an incentive for people to have the language, use the language, and also to make sure our public services are available through our through Irish as well. So that there's some of the things around the Gaeltacht. We're also trying to strengthen the summer colleges. Many of you may have gone to the Gaeltacht or hope to go to the Gaeltacht, but really trying to support the households that you stay in, and we've increased grants from 2,000 to 6,000 for new households, and increased the support for summer colleges by 20% and the households there. So that's the Gaeltacht and sport. I'm also government chief whip, and that means as chief whip my role is to keep the majority within the government stable, and to make sure that we keep the cohesion of the three parties in government together, and that's what I do every week. So that's just a broad outline of sport, Gaeltacht, and my role as chief whip. And happy to take any questions that you might have about politics, about your priorities, and about your areas of interest. And I commend your interest in politics, and obviously in trying to positively shape your decisions locally and nationally. So happy to take any questions that you might have.
For students, I think nowadays more than ever, it's more and more expensive for accommodation. You know, just out of school, maybe even if you are or aren't in university, and housing prices keep going up. So is there, or will there be any sort of implementations that would sort of benefit students who would be in that position of trying to look for a house?
Yeah, so that there's kind of, with the Housing for All policy that we have as a government, we've had a serious increase in investment on around affordable housing and affordable rent. So we're trying to scale up the supply of affordable housing at the moment, and we haven't reached a point yet which there's still, people are it's still a major issue for many people, and students as well. But for students in particular, Minister Harris, my colleague, is working with Minister O'Brien, who's the Minister for Housing, on trying to build more public student accommodation on third level sites, so that we've a lot of between the technological universities and the existing universities, we've a lot of space on campus where we could build much more affordable student accommodation for students. That would also free up more rental accommodation within areas if we build more supply and make it more affordable for students. So there is a plan to scale up on that, and Minister Harris will be outlining more detail on it, but we recognise that it's been difficult I know many students had difficulty this September in terms of their accommodation needs, and we're keen to address that through more purpose-built student accommodation.
I have a question.
Yep.
Talking about sports facilities, is there any chance of getting a national ice skating rink?
So we met with the so there's a winter sports group that were established through the Olympic Federation of Ireland, and we met with that group in the last 2 months. They're working on a plan. They've partners in the private sector that are interested in investing in an ice rink for Dublin, and they've conducted a cost benefit analysis and are engaging with Sport Ireland on that. It's obviously very popular at particular points of the year, but also we have there's an ice hockey community who have to go to Belfast at the moment because of the closure of the rink in Dundalk, and there certainly is a demand for such a rink, and they've conducted some of the analysis on that. So we had a very positive discussion with them in the last 2 or 3 months, and it's certainly on the agenda in the context of what the Olympic Federation have raised.
Do you think your government will make more all-weather pitches which one can access for free?
Yeah, that was actually one of the issues that was raised at the youth forum, was building more municipal is like a community facility which is open and accessible and affordable for people, and that's something that we are. So we'd record level of investment this year over 160 million in facilities. Many of those facilities are all-weather pitches. So for example, in Dublin 15 there's a new all-weather pitch being built in Porterstown Park, which Castleknock Celtic will be the primary users of. We're there's funding to replace the pitch next door here in Bridget's. There's funding for Castleknock GA on their pitch. There's additional funding for Coolmine across the road. So there's a lot of, I could go to every club. Peregrines had funding. So there's a lot of nearly every local club benefited from that. But in terms of I support more municipal or community facilities for people, and that's something we're going to reopen Sports Capital early next year, and there'll be an opportunity for the councils, I suppose, as local authorities. Fingal County Council would have responsibility to try and expand their footprint of pitches across the community here. So that's a good point, and I know it's that was one of the issues that was raised by young people at the youth forum.
Yeah, just another one. You said you're sort of in charge of like the Irish language and the Gaeltacht and everything in Ireland. I was wondering, for most universities, they require you to have a second language to take part in some of the courses. Actually, I'd say most of the courses, but they don't actually recognize Irish as a second language. So it led to myself and quite a few other people having to choose things like Spanish, so that we could get the course that we wanted to. And I was wondering, would that ever change and Irish actually be officially recognized as a second language?
Well, the way the third level it's an additional language. So each third level institution decides the entrance criteria themselves. So they're autonomous to decide that. So, but what we're trying to do is make Irish, make it more attractive for people to stay at a higher level of Irish. Part of that will be how we look at the curriculum and make it try and encourage it to be really very much a living language that people can use and enjoy. I think there's been mixed feedback from students at the moment regarding the current curriculum. So we're engaging with the Department of Education on that. But third level, each college or each third level institution independently decides what the admissions criteria are.
I think we're going to have some music in a minute as well, are we?
Yeah, we want to.
Girls?
First of all, give a round of applause actually for
Surprise there, too.